morning. Thank you for joining us. I'm Kara Wingfield, Education Director at the Parrish Art Museum. And during the closed period, we're working to bring you programs and resources you can enjoy at home. So each Wednesday this month, one of our teaching artists will be conducting a webinar workshop from their studio. I want to just take a minute to thank the artists and to note that they're volunteering their time. So please do whatever you can to support them and the museum. Here's what we have planned so far. Today, Barbara Thomas will join us. Next week, Eric Dever will present from his Watermill studio. And on April 22nd, Lori Lambrecht will join us from Bridgehampton. Barbara Thomas is a painter and a teaching artist who's been with the museum for about 10 years. She teaches the popular On Plein Air class in the summer, as well as many other workshops. And today the format will be about a 30 to 35-minute lesson. She'll be presenting from her studio, and after that, you can interact with her through the chat feature. So I'm going to turn things over to Barbara now.
Okay. Hi, everyone. It's great to see you. Very exciting. I think that this webinar is Zooming all over the world, actually. And it's very, very exciting. It's a very new and different way to make some art. But today we're going to have a really great workshop. I'm going to give you lots of tips and ideas for how to make a painting. And we're going to work today with the classical flower still life. So let's take a look at some examples of that before we get started. All right, so these are just a couple of examples from the Parrish Art Museum collection. This is a painting by William Glackens, an American Impressionist realist painter who painted at the end of the 19th century and the early 20th century. You'll see the very basic, classic still life centered on the page with a tabletop and a background and a pretty typical bunch of flowers in a pretty typical vase shape. So that is a way to begin, and we're going to kind of begin like that. But let's take a look at another artist just to give you some inspiration for other directions you can go after this class. This is a more modernist painter, Jane Freilicher. She painted in the mid to late 20th century, and you'll see how she used the vase of flowers with other objects on a table, and you see the entire table and you see a lot of background going on. So there are a lot of ways that you can treat this subject. You can, just be inspired by these, and then later on you can try some other things yourself. And this is just one of my works, just a simple watercolor still life. I'm a nature painter. I paint a lot outside, but I also paint in the studio. And I do like to, inspired by Jane Freilicher, use textures on textures. So you'll see the very detailed little cloth and the flowers in the vase. There's actually two little still lifes going on next to each other. So we're going to talk about all the different principles of these different kinds of approaches to still life painting that you can apply to pretty much any kind of painting. All right, so let's talk a little bit about your supplies. Some of you might have gotten a little caught off guard, and you might have only a piece of computer paper and a regular yellow 2B pencil. You can completely do this exercise with those very minimal materials, because really the very important art material is really right here. And that's what we're going to access today, and you're all going to really feel the wonderful kind of sense of self and empowerment that comes from taking something beautiful that you're looking at on the outside and bringing it into yourself and putting it on the page. So that's what we're going to do. So those of you who got a few other materials, or you could write these down for later, an array of pencils, which you might try today if you have. And then if you guys, oh, and then you're going to want an eraser in case you think you've made a mistake, but there are no mistakes. And then for painting, there's different kinds of paint kits you can get or use. Just a little watercolor set, this kind of typical round watercolor set, or I actually use these tube colors. They're called gouache watercolor. And today I'm going to use those, and I'm going to be painting with this palette, which you might want to get. And I'm going to show you this when I'm mixing the colors so you get a little sense of how that works. So I'm going to use this slightly bigger sheet. Some of you might not have such a big sheet, but you can, as I said, you can use any size sheet. You can make art on anything. So the other thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to use a black oil stick to do my drawing for you, my demonstration, so that you can really see it at home. So you don't have to use this, but you could actually try it sometime later. So let's start with looking at our subject, our beautiful vase of flowers. Most of you have it probably pretty simply. And let me just tell you, if you didn't get to get any kind of flowers, just use a coffee cup. You can actually use anything and get a lot out of this exercise. So looking at the vase of flowers, you're going to see the vase and the flowers generally the flowers are going to have a more big rounded shape, and the vase is going to be a more cylindrical shape. I actually have a kind of a funny demonstration for you. Cylindrical shape, flower shape. So you see that is actually kind of the classical shape of a still life. So keep that in mind, and there's a reason you need to keep that in mind, because a lot of times you might get a little nervous and your flowers might become very small in the drawing and the vase might become very big, or vice versa. So you want to keep your proportions correct. So here's a little trick for you. If you just take your brush or pencil, hold it up to your vase, put your thumb there and see how tall your vase is, and then put that next to your flowers, and you're going to see, in my case, my flowers are twice the height of my vase. So I know now already that that's what I've got to work with. So let's get started. So you can put your vase of flowers anywhere on your page next time. Right now, let's all kind of do it this way so you really get the full sense of it. We're going to start with your pencil or whatever you have to draw with, and we're just going to look at our subject and sketch it in very lightly. Just light line. Now, your pencil line is going to be a lot lighter than this, but this is just so you can really see it. And then rather than start to look individually at all these little flowers and all their details, we're going to look at the big picture. We're going to look at the overall shape of the flowers, which in this case is the sort of classical round. I'm just kind of randomly creating it. So if we never get any farther than that, we've got the basic shape down, right? So, because what we want to do is, when we're painting anything, painting is a building process, painting and drawing. And you want to start with the simple layout beneath everything and then build on that. And that's what I'm going to show you how to do. So we've got that sort of laid out. Then we want to look at the individual flowers. So let's take a look at one. So this guy has 2 buds on it. Ooh, this guy lost his little petal, but that's okay. And you can even count the petals, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and note the beautiful long leaf shapes. Just note the details of, these are all the characters now in this play that you're creating, which is your still life drawing or painting. So you need to give them their characters. So this one is over here. So let's just start shaping that flower. And then there's another one next to it. And we're basically going to start going around our page. Here's a tulip. Yours is going to look a little different. You can draw along with me, or you can just sketch lightly and even make notes of what we're doing. Here's a smaller tulip over here, and there's a couple of stems. Now notice one thing very important about flowers in a vase. Flowers in a vase are our human way of kind of taking nature and putting it someplace where we can relate to it more closely. Flowers in a field is a whole different thing. But here, when we've got them all in here, they're all like kind of bunched together and stuck inside this small hole. And what happens, you'll see down here, is a lot of shadow happens because they're all going down into the water, of course, which they need. So you can even actually give yourself a little bit of that feeling of the burst out from the vase, just to indicate that for yourself. You see all those stems, all right? So then we're gonna go back, where are we now? We're over here. We've got more of a daisy shape, a round shape. This flower has a very different character than this flower, right? So this is a round flower. Now, one word of caution, when you are first beginning, some of you may be rank beginners, you might have a tendency to make your flowers and your objects much smaller than they appear. Try to give them even more size, more weight, and then they'll come out the right weight. So here's our center, and then this flower has many, many, many petals. So we're just going to indicate the many, many, many petals. And here's another one over here. And here's another one here. Now, don't feel like you have to include every single flower. Remember that this is you are the artist, and this is your interpretation of what you're seeing. So if there's an extra flower in there that is kind of in your way, like this one, can't really see it, just leave it out. You don't have to have it, okay? So now we're over here, and we've got a few more. We're kind of running out of room here, but we'll just add a couple of those guys in. And you see how I'm staying within this little mapped out shape that I've made for myself? There's a little guy over here. And then we can add some leaves. So when you're setting up a still life, remember that the still life is your expression of this nature caught in this particular picture. So what you really want to do is really notice and maybe set up for yourself some beautiful shapes that come out from it. See these leaves? In my case, I have these wonderful leaves that are kind of sticking out, and very delicately and beautifully, I'll just add one up there. And then we're gonna take, yeah, so got that. Okay, so now you should have a drawing in lines, right, with your pencils. You've got everything mapped out. This is the skeleton of your painting or even your drawing. Then what you can start to do with your pencil, if you're doing more drawing than painting today, is start shaping everything. What do we mean by shaping it? We mean rendering the tonal values, the darks and the lights, because the thing that really makes objects stand out in space is the way the light is hitting them. So that's something you really want to notice. So I'm going to just take this oil crayon and add some shadow. This is where the deepest, darkest shadow of my drawing is going to be, where the stems all get caught in the bottom of the vase. And then the vase is sitting on a table. Remember, you have a little cloth, hopefully. If you don't, then just create it. So I'm just going to indicate a little bit of a table back here, And my vase is sitting on a table, and I'm going to start making it round with rounded lines. This is called hatching, and then we're going to make it into cross hatching, which is going the other way. And you see what I call this is kind of two-dimensional sculpting, creating the shape so that it starts to look more round. Now notice I didn't really put a lot of this kind of hatching detail into my flowers, but I could start doing that. This one's got a dark center, and the whole center is a little darker. Of course, if I'm painting, I'm going to use paint to do that a little later. We'll get to that in a minute. And here's a petal shape. Remember, there are no straight lines in nature. Everything has a little bit of a curve. So if you want to make your painting or drawing really have a liveliness to it, you want to keep your lines curving. You see that? Curving out. And then the main thing that gets your vase of flowers to sit on its surface is the shadow. So let's assume that the light is hitting this vase from this side, and then it's going to create a shadow on this side. You see, this is the dark side. So we're going to make that shadow. And you see, as soon as we do that, it really sits on the table, right? Because nothing can really sit, no object can actually sit on anything without creating a shadow of some kind. So you're going to have some. So now you see that it really sits there. And now here's another thing. Go back to thinking about the Glackens painting for a minute. And how did he get his object of his flowers and vase to really look like they were sitting in space, rather than this just kind of graphic rendition of it on a white page? Not that you can't do that. That's actually perfectly beautiful. Look at Matisse or David Hockney or all kinds of artists who just really use the graphic quality of the object sitting in space. But if we want to create a feeling of space, we have to add some space. Space is not an object, but it has shadows. So as soon as I do that, do you see? Now your flowers look like they're sitting in space. All right. Now let's see what happens when we start putting on some paint. So as I said, you've got you might have some different kind of paint materials than I have, no problem. A couple of things I want to tell you about paints is that you don't need a huge amount of colors. You will notice on here, there's no green. And I just have a particular pet peeve about making my own green, because green that comes out of the tube can be a little bit harsh. And look at the beautiful, soft aspect of the green in nature. So I'm going to make my own green, and hopefully you will too. It's a lot of fun. So I've got the basic primary colors, yellow, blue, and I've got a couple of versions of red. And the reason I have this bright pink red is because we've got quite a few pink flowers in here, and a couple of blues and some white, just in case. And now you've got, if you're painting, you've got a glass of water. You're going to need that. And your brushes, you're going to have a variety of brushes. If you only have one brush, so be it. Remember, cavemen only had one stick with charcoal that they drew their animals on the wall. So you don't need a lot of tools. You really don't. So let's take a medium-sized brush and start mixing our colors. Dip your brush in the water, just like that, and then just go like that on the side to get some of the water off. And here's an important trick. You don't want to start with your greens. You want to start in a flower soil with the colors of the flowers, because if the green gets into this purple, they're two opposite colors, and they will turn your purple, beautiful, bright purple flowers kind of brown. So we don't want to do that. So let's start with making our tulip color. So I'm going to take some of this pink and I'm going to mix it on my palette Might add a little more water. I'm gonna put a little white in there. Now notice, and a little red, just to tamp this down because that's a very bright pink. So there we go. Now, notice I'm making this very thin, watery. And what you want to do when you're doing your painting, just the way we did, we kind of worked our drawing all over the page. We want to work the paint all over the page. We don't want to sit and concentrate on one flower because then we might not ever get to the other flowers. So we want to build the whole thing. So very quickly, now you can erase out some of your pencil lines if you want, but you might not have time to do that right now. So here's another tulip. And I just got those 2 tulips. There's a little bit of one over there out of the picture. And then we're gonna rinse and we're gonna go to the next purpley color because the orange is an opposite of purple. So we don't want to mix orange and purple. We're gonna get a brownish color. So now we have to go a little bit more purpley. How do we do that? We take a little bit of blue, more blue, touch of white just to lighten it up a little. All right, now you're going to see, now we're going to start painting this flower. Remember, we've got these many, many petals that go all the way around. We're going to work pretty quickly because we have a short video, and we also want to work quickly because we have a lot of coverage to do. You know, the thing that a lot of people don't realize is that painting is almost like, go back to your childhood, or maybe your child is sitting right with you and can certainly relate to this. A lot of making a painting is coloring book. You need your beautiful drawing. Now you have to color it in. It's a lot of work. It's not just all creative fun. It's a lot of work putting the paint on. So, what I call covering ground. And then those are our purple guys. Okay, then you'll notice we can get into the dark detail of the purple flower. We're gonna make our purple a little darker. And the way we make it darker is we just add a little less water and a little more paint for now. Later, I'm gonna show you some other tricks on that. It's not too dark. All right, so that's kind of laid in. And now we're gonna go to our orange. So we're gonna rinse our brush out really well. And we're gonna make our orange. How are we gonna make orange? Orange is kind of the opposite of purple, so we don't want them to get together. So we're gonna use a clean spot. We're gonna take a little yellow and a little red, not too much. Always start with less paint than more, because especially with red, you're going to find that red is the most intense color in the color spectrum. And you're going to find that a little red goes a long way. So do you see, I just put the tiniest dot in there, and look, already I got the orange. So now we're going to color these in. And of course, as soon as we start adding the opposite color, do you see how everybody's now kind of perking up and glowing a little bit more? Because when you're next to your opposite, you get more intense. It's a law of human nature too. All right, let's see, I don't know what's back there. We'll fill that in later. All right, so now you see how everybody's kind of getting happier because all the colors are getting together. Now we're going to go to our green. So green, what is green? If I could talk to you, I'd ask you to tell me blue and yellow. That's a little too much yellow, right? So let's darken her up a little. See, when you make your own green, you can control it and make it your own beauty. Put a little of this blue in there. All right, what do you think? Pretty good. All right, so now we're just gonna color in our leaves. Now notice we're not really putting any tonal values in yet. we're just setting up all the colors because we have to do this step by step. We have to, oh, I see, there's more flowers back there. Okay. Beautiful leaf shapes. We want to retain our leaf shapes. We've got the dark, we're going to get to this in a second. We've got some dark leaves in here. We want to go around our flowers. We're just going to quickly, we're going to add that purple guy right up here. There's a purple guy. All right. Now we've got our basic colors. How about our vase? We want to start with our flowers because honestly, the best way to start is at the top and kind of work your way down. But notice how I'm working evenly all over this painting, right? So now I have to try to capture this blue of the vase. We're not going to quite get it, but we're going to get close. And I'm just going to color it in like a coloring book. Now, because my oil stick is creating the dark shadows, I'm going to just add those dark shadows on top for you to be able to see. So let's start adding those. So there you go. Take a look at that. And that's my basic still life without my background yet, without any darks and details. But because I covered it all at once smoothly, one after the other, not concentrating on one flower and leaving all the rest undone, if I don't paint any more today or ever, I've still got a pretty nice looking painting, right? So that's why you want to keep it going evenly. So now we're going to take a look at how do we capture the dark shadows. Take a look at your still life. You're going to see that you've got something dark going on down into that concave shape, just like even if you're using a coffee cup. When you want to make something dark with paint, with pencil, you want to add more pencil, dark pencil. With paint, if you add some dark blue, you're going to get a darker green, and then you can add that in to create the shadows. Now I'm going to be a little more careful because I want to start detailing this a little bit more as I go. All right. And let me just show you a little detail on some of the flowers. You can also actually add some of this to your leaves. Let's do a tulip. So a tulip has a shadow, dark shadowy center. Always really note the character, again, the character of your object. What is it? It's round, it has a dark center, it has shadows. How do we create that darker pink? Whenever you want to create a darker version of anything, trust me, ultramarine blue is your friend. Now we're going to add, that's a little too wacky. Making this nice and bright so you guys can actually see it. So you see how I'm just taking the dark shadow and I'm just kind of adding a little bit in, not too much. I can do that also with this purple guy. Let's do that. I'll just add a little bit more. And then, if you want to soften it, you can take your brush, take all the paint out, and just have it have a little bit of water, and then just rub the light and the dark color together. And that's going to soften. Don't go all the way into the dark. You want the dark to have its darkness, but then you also want your light. You see how that's working? So if we had more time, we would fill in even a little bit more. But let's get to this idea of the background and your base. So I don't know what kind of cloth you have. I have, if you can see it, a red checked tablecloth napkin, which is sort of reminiscent of a sweet kitchen, right? Kitchen tablecloth. And what does it have? It has these red checks on it. And the red checks are going in a perspective. Now look how I am, just with one single line, I'm creating the checks. Whatever pattern you have, you want to, work on capturing that pattern. So that's that really puts it on a table, right? It gives it its base. Your base could be pretty much anything, but that's what mine is. And then if we want to add a little bit to this shadow, shadows are always cool. So you want to stay with the blues, but they always have a little bit of a grayness to them. So we're going to create a little bit of a grayish purpley color to create that shadow color. And whatever that is, I don't know. And then usually for your background, if you want to just be washy with your background, now you don't have to put in a background, but my background has sort of a variety of my different paintings, but maybe I'm just going to use a slightly bigger brush you could try. And why don't I just create a background any color I feel like? How about that? Because you don't have to make things look like they look, as it were, because what does anything look like anyway? It looks like what you want it to look like. And as soon as I start adding some color to this background, everybody is in a place. They're not just in this white limbo. They're in a room, and maybe this color that I've chosen indicates that it's a sunny room. Maybe it's a sunroom, like that. So hopefully you all have something like this, or that you've made notes on this. And I'll tell you, just looking at it now, one of the very important things about making a painting, by the way, is spending some time. We didn't have time within this video to really look at what you made and what you could do to improve what you made, because every thing of paint you put on isn't necessarily going to be the perfect one. You might want to make some changes. So I'm going to analyze my changes on this. I don't really like how bright all these purples are, so I'm going to kind of tone them down. So I'm going to go with a different red over here, and I'm going to just put some more little orangey red on top of there and cut that pink a little bit. Doesn't that look better? I think that looks better. And then I'm going to do the same thing for this crazy purple that just got a little too intense. I'm going to just tone it down. So I could work and work and work on this, on these details, and keep improving it. But right now, I think we're pretty much coming to the end. I'm going to detail this a little bit. You can go as far as you want with details. You can do no details, because you're going to see a lot of, look at Matisse or some modernist artists who really just knock it out really fast, and it's absolutely stunning. You can do a lot of detail or a little detail. So what I'm going to do is just add some shadow and make that a little darker. You see this little flower that I have has these little orange, dark orange dots. And you see just how the addition of that little thing just brings us to another level. Doesn't it? Yes, it does. And we can do the same. I think we're coming to the end of our time, Kara. Are we? Yeah, gonna darken this. Give that a shape. Again, drawing is painting. So what you're really doing is, you can also now take your paint, and this is something that in oil paint especially, you're going to take your paint and you're going to go in the direction, just like we did with our drawing, of your object, rounded brush strokes, so that you can make your object look rounder. All right, so we did a lot of dark. We've got a couple minutes left, actually. So I'm going to now show you how you can do your lights, because your whole range of tonal values within your color goes from the darkest dark to the lightest light. So the way that you're going to want to do that is you're going to take your white, and how you would do that in drawing is you would just maybe leave the white paper or just use your pencil very, very lightly. We're going to take some white and we're going to mix that into our color. Let's start with our orange. And then we're going to add a little bit of light. Let's see, make that a little more so you can see it. See my little rounded brush strokes, detailing the outside of these flowers as they bend toward us. So one thing I think will happen after you do this observational exercise of painting your still life and looking at your flowers is I can almost guarantee it, and I'll give you your money back if it doesn't happen. When you go outside and you look at nature, you will see more detail. You will see better. You will see how flowers are made. You will see the little dot patterns on them. You will see the shape of the clouds, and it will just make you happier. All right, so we're just detailing. Right? And we can do that. I can show you really well on your leaves. So our leaves, we made a sort of a basic deep brown, came out a little dark. So what about if we want to catch the light on our leaves? How do we do that? We create a lighter, yellower green, and then we can, I'll make that even lighter for you. We can really shape the leaf. Look at that. So your darks and your lights are your secret ingredient. The more darks and lights you have in your painting, the more lively. And lively, another way of saying full of life. Because when you're painting a nature scene or a still life of something living, you want it to be full of life, right? All right, what do you think? Let's see, got a couple minutes left. Let me give you another, okay, I'm gonna give you another one. You see how we made shadow on the, going behind the table, the background. So how would we color in that shadow? So I made this kind of yellowy green background, but maybe we want to go a little darker, a little cooler back here. I don't want to go too green because I don't want to compete with my leaves. So maybe we'll go a little bit brown. And go around our flowers really carefully. Now you can start to really go carefully in between your objects. So this darker background is going to make your flowers show a little bit more, right? And let's see, soften that. And let's keep adding. Wherever you see some kind of white space that isn't kind of taken care of, right? We don't want to have, you can't make a cake and just frost part of it, right? So if you have this unfrosted part of your cake here, you want to just add in some more color. And the more dark and light you add, the more everything is going to stand out. All right, and then the final thing we can do is, oops, just add a little shadow to the back of our table. Now, notice how I'm just now holding my brush like this, and I'm just really loosely kind of putting some paint in here. You don't have to have even, tight, finished paint all over your painting. If you really look closely at painting that you see in the museums or wherever you're looking, you're going to see some loose areas and some tight areas. And that's a very important way of thinking about how things look in life, because our eyes don't focus on everything exactly 100%. Our eyes glaze over certain things. They pass through. So that's another secret trick to capturing life. All right, I think we're done. And we're going to open up, I think, to questions. Are we in the right time, Kara? Yes. Okay. All right. So let's see. Oh, great. Someone just telling me they're there. So thank you again, you guys, all of you, for coming. This was really, really fun for me, and I hope you got something out of it. And you can certainly feel free to ask me something in your questions. And there's probably going to be a capability of following up even on the Parrish Art Museum website. So I'm very excited that I got this opportunity to share with you. And I see the questions pouring in. Okay, here we go. Thank you so much. This is so wonderful during this pandemic. How can I get the wrinkles on the napkin? Great. Okay, so the wrinkles on the napkin, I made my napkin very flat, but let's talk about wrinkles. Let's do just a little bit of a quick drawing demo on that. Do you want to fill in the napkin? Okay, that's good. Okay, so a little drawing demo on wrinkles. So you've got a napkin. Say the napkin is flat on the table. Oops, let me get to my big. Say the napkin is flat on the table and it's got a little bit of a fold like that. Just feel free to draw the fold. And then you're going to have to shade underneath the fold and shade behind the fold. And what I mentioned before about two-dimensional sculpting, two-dimensional drawing, sculpting of the shape. The top of the fold catches the light and then it gets a little bit of a shadow. I think that looks quite a bit like a little napkin fold. So painting folds, you need to just fold some material and draw it and draw it and draw it and you'll get it. Okay, let's see. Is there any way to add highlights with colored pencil? Okay, so let me go back to one that just is about hard to deal with the leaves at the base of the arrangement, to define or leave a mess of dark. Well, we don't ever want to leave a mess, right? So the leaves, remember, are, some of the leaves are going to bunch into your vase. Remember that you're in control of this still life, so you can arrange the leaves in a way that will work well for you. So what you really want to do is just make sure your stems are coming out of your vase and your leaves are a little bit free of the vase. And then, for instance, there might be a leaf right here that you might see, so you have to just draw it in. But you want to just make sure that everything is going into the vase, the leaves and the stems. And some of the leaves in there are just going to be a little darker. Okay, let's see. Oh, and we will be, yes, posting this video on the website, so you can look to capture. Let's see. Do you want to fill in the napkin? Okay, so we didn't do that, but we could. And my belief as a painter myself is in a finished painting, even white is a color that you want to address on your surface. There's a lot of drawing and painting that is only, that will show the white paper, but you can and should, just because it will give you a little more time in the outfit using your paint. Here you probably can't see the white, but now I'm coloring in my squares. I could either color in my squares individually, or I could paint the whole thing white and then add. Now, I like coloring them in individually because I feel like it gives it just a little bit more of an organic feeling. You see how the white is going into the red a little bit, and it just kind of looks more what we call painterly. All right, so that answers that question. And I think we're just about finished. What is the next class on? You'll have to look on the website and you will see the next artist teacher, Eric Dever. He's really wonderful. Let's see. I think that looks like all the art questions. Let me see, any others? No? Okay. So thank you again. It was really, really wonderful. I hope you have a great time making a drawing or a painting. And I think there is also on the website some information about where you can post your work, which will be very exciting to see.